We are here live for another edition of Motorsports Today on TikTok on a Monday evening. Thanks for joining us. Eddie Kalegi, Adam Tropper, Tim Moore, TCB. Everybody's in the house, and there's so much to talk about. From the round of 8 opener, Las Vegas Motor Speedway. We got F1 back in action this coming weekend in the United States at the Circuit of the Americas, and NASCAR heads to Talladega for the third to last race of the Cup Series season. Plenty to get to. We'll dive into it momentarily. First off, a reminder, as always, you can follow us on the socials at Motorsports Today, including our YouTube channel, which has popped off with like 1,500 subs. So if you haven't been one of our 1,300 new subscribers, do that because all of our episodes are there too. Also on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find us on the web, motorsportstoday.net. We've had a lot of articles up, and we will have a lot more coming this week, including some interview that Jeffrey Ronca did with Mick Schumacher after the IndyCar test today at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But anyway, let's get into it with our pit stop. So, big race, Las Vegas Motor Speedway, round of 8, just Hendrick, Penske, and Gibbs battling it out. You had William Byron, Kyle Larson fast early. Ryan Blaney goes up and smokes stage 1, hits the outside wall in turn 3 after cutting a tire. Blaney now well below the cut line. Fortunately for him, though, he's won fall Talladega, he's won fall Martinsville before. He's going to have to probably do one of those again to make it into the final 4. Then in stage 3, William Byron had the lead, got loose, lost it to Kyle Larson, and then 5 laps later, Ty Dillon pits in front of him. Bad communication. William Byron runs into the back of the 10. Huge crash ends both their races. Then an 11-car pileup on the ensuing restart. Chase Briscoe and Joey Logano gambled for 2 tires in their final stop, stayed in front of the other playoff guys for a little bit, but Kyle Larson started to weave his way through, got past Logano, caught Briscoe, and then here came Denny Hamlin. Passed all of them, got past Larson, passed his teammate with 4 to go, and got an emotional 60th career win to punch his ticket to the final foursome where he has not been since before the next gen era. That's your pit stop. Let's get into this, guys. I mean, the story of this race, there's a lot to talk about, but the story of this race is that this guy got passed for 10th all time on the wins list by this guy. They are now at 60 wins. They're tied for 10th all time. It's a big deal. Let's talk about it. And a lot of people were questioning, why was Denny Hamlin so emotional after this win? Of course, we know his father's been under the weather, and that matters a lot to him. And we know the championship thing is big, but it's not a huge deal. Honestly, 60 wins, we've heard it. It seems like more of an accomplishment for him, at least in his mind. But when you think about it with Denny Hamlin, this accomplishment matters so much for him because he's proving that he's still got it so deep into his career. And beyond that, 60 was the marker that he wanted to get to. There's never any guarantees in this sport. I just mentioned Kevin Harvick. He won back-to-back races in 2022 and then never won again. Kyle Busch, I don't think anybody thought when he won his 3rd race already 4 months into a season that he wouldn't win the next 2.5 years and maybe never again. Jimmy Johnson won at Dover in 2017, still looked dominant. He was the defending champ the next week. Brake failure at Pocono, was never the same again. So as good as Denny Hamlin looks now, you can lose it fast. And for Denny Hamlin, he wanted to get to 60, and he gets there. He was so tantalizingly close 3 weeks ago. You can tell why this one meant so much to him. It's right up there with the Daytona 500s, his 50th win, his first win for the most important in his career. And now on the bigger level, it puts him in position to contend for a championship at Phoenix, maybe get that title. And now that he's got 60 wins, maybe if he wins it, he walks off into the sunset, retiring as a champion. So that's my 2 cents on it. That's why Denny Hamlin was so emotional, and what an incredible drive it was, weaving past everyone. He not only passed Briscoe and Logano, he had to pass Larson, he had to pass Bell, he got past all of them. A phenomenal drive from a phenomenal talent who now stands among the 10 most winningest drivers in NASCAR history. TCB, you're wearing the shirt. I'll go to you first. Denny Hamlin picking up this win, getting to the Final Four. One of your Toyota picks in the Final Four is there.
Yeah, congrats to Denny again. 60. He talked about on his podcast a few weeks ago how bad he wanted 60 when him and Bubba Wallace got into it. And especially with his father being ill, you hate to hear that. But nevertheless, one of my predictions did come true. The Toyota did get in. I still do think Bell will get in, and I was honestly very surprised. I did not see a lot of people talk about this on social media after the race. Chase Briscoe, I don't want to say just laid over and let Denny have it. Yes, Denny did have the fresher tires. I just expected Briscoe to take the outside in 1 and 2 and really hold them tight, being that the way how everyone portrays Las Vegas is this is like the most important race of the round, right? Because Talladega is a crapshoot and Martinsville is somewhat of a crapshoot too. But so for Briscoe to just kind of go low and just let Denny have it was a little surprising to me. Again, tire wear and well, he had 2 tires and Denny had 4. But I was very surprised to see Denny just go flying by Larson and then just pass Briscoe as if he was just completely standing still. And to of course get the penultimate 60th win. And again, congrats to him. But I'm still riding with my Toyota picks. I think we're gonna get 3 Toyotas in, and oh man, I really do think we're gonna get a Chevy in. I can't say it's gonna be Chase Elliott like I was harping on a few weeks ago, but I think it's definitely gonna be one of Mr. H's Chevys in there.
Yeah, well, all those Toyotas certainly impressed. But Tim, I think it's interesting because I think back to when we were all at Pocono, and it was a very similar situation where Chase Briscoe had a good car, but not a great car, but played strategy right, got himself at the front. But the difference was in that race, he was able to hold off the contingent led by Hamlin and others on better tires and ultimately got the win. Now, it's easier to pass, obviously, in an intermediate with this next-gen car than at Pocono Raceway, but still, Hamlin not only had to pass Briscoe, he had to get by other guys on 4 tires that were at the same tire age as him. Bell, Larson, Reddick, he seamlessly passed them all and then still had enough to get Briscoe with 4 to go, which I think just makes this all the more impressive.
No, it makes it more impressive, but I think, not to go back to TCB's point about why it was surprising that maybe Briscoe didn't race as hard. I think you have to remember a little bit earlier what happened with that 19 team. I mean, it was pretty clear he had some sort of toe link damage. It may not have been major enough to break the toe link, but there was definitely something that was bent that had him especially pushing tight. So hence why it was maybe so easy for Denny Hamlin to go by the 19 was because of the fact, again, obviously James Small, by the way, credit to him, saying, hey, listen, we know we may not win the race, but we've got to do something different to win a championship. Takes the risk, takes the 2-tire call. Now, for James Small, he knows if you take a 2-tire call, these left sides are worn in, it's a lot harder to really take a big swing to loosen up your car because of the issue of the 19 pushing tight. If they go too far, he's going to be self-spinning and so on. Whereas Hamlin on 4 fresh, you need time to build up the pressures, about 2-3 laps. I mean, for what him and Chris Gale were able to do, and also I think what goes very under the radar, by the way, Christopher Bell, had he maybe gotten another restart, he looked arguably just as good as Denny Hamlin, in my opinion, on the low fuel adjustments. And it just shows right now, again, where Joe Gibbs Racing is, which, Eddie, to go back to your point, what makes it special isn't just that Denny had to pass everybody. It shows how good JGR is right now and just being able to adjust and adapt. And throughout the day, I could sit here and say Kyle Larson had the best car. William Byron had the best car. I would even argue at points Tyler Reddick had the best car in the race. But the best teams who win are the best teams who adapt. And right now, this year, more than ever for Joe Gibbs Racing, and why, for example, why you can't count out Denny Hamlin after all these years of not winning a championship. The one thing that is different from this year to years past is that this team adapts when it matters, and you are seeing it more than ever in 2025. So that is why that win is so special and shows exactly why Joe Gibbs Racing right now is at the top of the sport, the NASCAR Cup Series.
Yeah, and Tropper, we were there 2 years ago when Denny Hamlin won his 50th. Now he wins his 60th, and now has a chance at the title with, as Tim said, all these things going right for Toyota. So, I mean, I think it's really dependent, unfortunately, on how many Penske's make it to the Final Four. But I think Denny Hamlin has as good of a chance as ever to finally get that championship this year.
Absolutely, but also just to talk about Hamlin's career and the longevity that he's had. This is 20th full-time season. He's won in 19 of those. Even 2013, when he got injured, he was able to win at Homestead. 2018 was his only winless season, and there were close calls there as well. But I was doing the math last night, and I believe from 2019 to now, just the last 7 seasons since that winless season, half of his career wins have come just since that time. So he has had such a late career resurgence too, proving that he can still get it done and become a championship caliber, not necessarily winning the championship yet, but being able to do what he's doing at this age and this far in his career is incredible. I remember when we were there for win number 50, Pocono 23, me, you, and Tim, I asked him in the media center, how does it feel? How would it set in? And he genuinely didn't, it was like, emotionally he just wasn't ready to take it all in. And I think the difference now with Win 60 is he's been talking on his podcast to media that he doesn't care about the championship anymore. He doesn't think the championship's legitimate. He just wants to get as many wins as possible before he's done. And 60 became his benchmark. Who knew he was going to have 6 wins this season? This is an incredible year, especially for the next gen era. But to get to that milestone, that's why Denny broke down. That's why it meant so much. And now, honestly, I think he's more of a championship threat than he has ever been, because he clearly just, in a way, it feels like he doesn't care about the championship anymore. It feels like everything else is icing on the cake. He's just going to go out and try to win every race. And if he wins the championship, then so be it. He could silence the haters, but he's content. And a content, energized, happy Denny Hamlin apparently is the most dangerous thing the sport has seen in a long time. Obviously 10th all time in wins now, and let's be honest, he's only going to go up, assuming he continues through the rest of his contract and races until 2027. I would not be surprised to see that benchmark be 65, maybe not 70 wins, but he can get pretty high up, and I think, frankly, he is the best driver to never win a NASCAR championship right now. I don't think you can argue anymore. Mark Martin has the longevity, and this could become a whole thing. Mark Martin has longevity in his career. So does Denny Hamlin. But Denny Hamlin, like Mark Martin, has raced some of the best of all time. Denny Hamlin has raced Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Tony Stewart, Matt Kenseth, too many to count. And Hamlin has risen above. And I'm actually going to take this stat from, I believe it was Iceberg. I saw the video earlier today, but talking about Denny's next gen stats specifically since 2022, he has a 50% top 10 rate. With the parity of these cars, how is that possible? The second most wins in the next gen era behind Larson. So I believe it's 70 top 10s in 140 races, which for all intents and purposes is absolutely incredible. Regardless of the lawsuit, regardless of the hate and being the villain, this guy getting the 60 wins is truly something incredible that needs to be appreciated. And like I said, that's why he broke down, and rightfully so. I mean, he deserves it. He deserves all the recognition in the world. And if he can win a championship 3 weeks from now, it's just a culmination of everything.
Yeah, and I'm happy to see it felt like a lot of fans recognized the achievement. He wasn't getting booed nearly as much at the end of the race as he has.
Well, he didn't smack talk the fans either for once.
Well, yeah, that definitely played a role. But in any event, big accomplishment for Denny Hamlin. Sky's only up from here. Going to be interesting to see what he can do. But I just want to reiterate my point. We have seen drivers fall off fast and fall off suddenly. So that's why Hamlin getting to 60 this year, I think, meant so much. He didn't want that carrying over into next year because there's just so much uncertainty and you never know what's going to happen. So for Denny Hamlin, very big for him to get to 60. But in the context of the championship now, we've seen statistically, if you win at Vegas, good chance you're gonna run well at Phoenix, have a chance at the championship. And that's largely because now, while he's going to want to win and continue to add wins, he can lay back at Vega and Martinsville mentally a bit because he doesn't have to worry about the point situation and the team can really focus on Phoenix. It's not as much to Hamlin, the driver, but everybody in the back end at Toyota and with JGR, they can focus on Phoenix for that team and that car for the next 2.5 weeks, which is a luxury nobody else has. But
I have a question.
Yeah, Tim,
because I didn't listen to Actions Detrimental. Did Denny, and this is the big thing that I wonder, because obviously he's been talking about 60 for such a long, long time. Did he say what his next goal is? Like, what's the next thing for him other than the championship?
No.
Because that's the thing. To me, what makes Denny stand out this year compared to past years was that driving factor from the start of the year. He said, listen, I want to push as hard as I can to get to 60. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if it's a reality, but if I can win 4 or 5 races, I can make it a possibility. Right now, obviously, he turns around, he's won 6 to this point. To me, Denny Hamlin with a goal that's outside of a championship is a different Denny Hamlin. And not to go back in the conversation too, but the other thing that makes him such a threat at Phoenix is you have to remember, Joe Gibbs Racing now is as good as they've ever been, I would argue, in this next-gen car at Phoenix with what we've seen over the last year in terms of their growth. So to me, if Denny's goal, let's say, isn't to win a championship, I'm eager to see if it's to win more races in this round, if it's to get to 70, whatever it may be. But outside of focusing on a championship, it feels whatever Denny Hamlin is focusing on, and obviously it's very clear, by the way, the lawsuit has not hurt him. May have hurt his decision-making last round, perhaps, but it hasn't been a distraction. Whatever's happening for Denny, it's working, and he should not change it. That's all I'm saying.
And remember, just that he has the capability at the remaining tracks. If he has nothing to lose for the next 2 weeks, he's won at Talladega before. He is one of the best to ever go to Martinsville outside of, say, Jeff and Jimmy.
I say there was a point in time where you go to the Super Speedway, and of course, I know Denny wins 3 Daytona 500s, but we sit there and we're like, yeah, the 11, he's going to compete for a win. And you just know he will be there, right place, right time. You can say the same thing as well about Ryan Blaney, for example, at one point given time. But Denny Hamlin is a very talented Super Speedway racer. Now, I know he wants to get back to that dominant form he once was at Martinsville of leading laps and so on, but I could see Denny Hamlin win the next 3 races. I don't think that's an unrealistic thing for him to win the final 4 races of the season and do something that, by the way, does not happen very often. I'm just saying.
And I mean, it's been happening in the other series with Zilich and Heim. And just saying, if he did somehow win the next 3 races, he would tie Kyle Busch for 9th on the all-time wins list at 63. So just worth throwing that one in there too. But Denny Hamlin gets the victory. Good points day for 6 of the 8 playoff. Well, 5 of the 8 playoff drivers. Okay for Chase Elliott. Definitely wanted more. Again, when you're in the round of 8, there's no room for error, and you cannot be making mistakes on pit road, and Chase Elliott gets the penalty, kind of derails him, and then he gets caught up in that bizarre restart crash where, again, shout out SVG, was running on speed in the top 10, took a 2-tire gamble to get up to 6th, and then got turned by Ty Gibbs and Christopher Bell. But let's talk about the 2 guys that crashed. And I know Ryan Blaney crashed first, and I know he's in a more dire situation, but I think the one we really have to diagnose is what happened with William Byron in that 24 car. Because, first of all, NBC completely missed it by showing a 3rd replay of him losing the lead, which they also missed in real time. That was not a banner 5 minutes from them.
Is that the 3rd time something like that perfectly timed has happened this season where they're showing a replay? Next thing you know, that guy's crashing as soon as they cut back. Because I feel like we've seen that a lot this year.
What's the 3rd? Because the New Garden one is iconic.
Well, yeah, but I'm trying to think. I thought there was something earlier in the season as well that happened as well. I could be wrong.
Like on the NBC slate or more on like Fox's?
On Fox's.
Oh, well, that's more believable.
Well, because the one I remember that still cracks me up is the first Next Gen race when Mike Joy is like, we're going to hear from an ARCA driver. And then 2 seconds later, Jacques Villeneuve is wrecking the field as a lapper in the Daytona.
Remember that.
Oh, yeah.
That was a good one. But, okay. Speaking of wrecking the field. So it's funny, I saw Mark Martin tweeting about how this was very reminiscent of a crash he had with J.J. Yaley back almost 20 years ago now in the Coke 600 when Yaley drove for Gibbs. But this was such a bizarre sequence because William Byron clearly didn't know that the 10 car was pitting. Ty Dillon was under the indication that his spotter had at least sent the memo to the 24 team, and that clearly didn't happen. And I know you've got spotters. I know it's the new age, but I'm sorry. You still stick your hand out the window. That's the universal signal. That has been the universal signal since the 1970s that someone is coming down pit road and that you're going to be pulling off. It is not that difficult to do. Instead of trying to rely on this middleman communication, Ty Dillon should simply stick a hand out the window, especially when he knows that he's racing near the leaders and is going to be coming down pit road, and especially when you've seen in your mirror that 24 car has been wrapping the bottom all race, that's been the lane he's running. Some of that has to go on Ty Dillon. So I understand from his perspective, Tim, that he, believed that his spotter was going to be the one relaying that message. But I think in big picture, it's not that difficult. It's not that much of an inconvenience. Stick your hand out the window and make that clear, especially if you're near the leaders.
Yeah, and here's the other thing too, okay? As somebody who has, let's say on iRacing, right, doesn't have a chat, so it's hard to communicate when I'm pitting. And of course, we don't have the luxury of sticking your hand out the window like in real life. What does Ty Dillon have to gain not sticking your hand out the window? You're a lap down. You're going 2 laps down. What is the point of you not communicating from a driver's end? It's horrible. And the fact of the matter is, rather William Byron was going to win that race or not, only we could have seen. We don't know. But you ruined somebody's season in the most important round of deciding a champion. The only thing you could do worse is wrecking a Final Four contender in that, pretty much in that scenario. So, and I'll say it too, because I don't want to trail off the discussion trail here, but multiple times on this show, we've talked about how, listen, Ty Dillon's had some great ups this season. He's looked better, more competitive as compared to past Cup seasons. But these are direct examples that make me backtrack that statement and make me scratch my head why I can't understand what Ty Dillon's doing.
But Tim, he made it to the finals of the in-season challenge.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's great and great. And again, it makes you kind of shake your head and makes you, again, scratch your head a little bit of like, he's showing signs of growth, and then he does Quinn Houff things like that, where it's like you look like you don't belong on a racetrack. And
I was going to ask, which is worse, this or Quinn Houff?
Quinn Houff is still pretty bad because he pit from the middle lane.
Yeah.
I don't get me wrong. I think that Ty Dillon could have held it maybe a little bit lower, but most people kind of pit at that space up, if that makes sense anyways. So to me, that wasn't too egregious. Just the communication aspect. I don't expect people to communicate for me unless you have no capability of communicating. You have the luxury of a hand. You have nothing to gain by that. Put it out the window. And now, not only did he just cost himself millions of dollars of a car they're going to have to repair, he may as well have cost himself his reputation with other teams that don't want to work with them because he cost their season off of his, really, quite frankly, horrendous mistake. You can't blame that on a spotter. It is all on the driver. And maybe somebody has a different view because, again, I understand it's circumstantial, but that is all on Ty Dillon, and he should be embarrassed. And quite frankly, if his grandfather wasn't paying money for that car, he wouldn't be on the track for me for the rest of the season, because how they handled the radio the rest of the way through, which grinds my gears. Oh, well, he took us out of our misery anyways. The car was awful. Get off the racetrack and stay off. You belong off with how bad that was. I'm just saying.
No, it's valid, but I think this brings up a good point. We'll talk about the implications for Byron in a second.
Also, remember, Ty Dillon is the first ever driver for 2311 Racing. Just had to say that. Remember that. So
he also has 3 stage wins at 3 different types of tracks in the Cup Series: Dega, Bristol, and the Roval. I know my Ty Dillon stats, folks.
But for all the positives, there's a major negative, and that's the issue.
Okay, I'm not arguing. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Tim.
It's like we talk these positives. It's like, oh man, I want to see Ty Dillon in the Cup Series, and then he does something like that. That's what's grinding my gears. It's like, I want to see you as a Cup Series driver, but then you make me do stuff that it's like Rick Ware can only be, like Cody Ware doesn't even do that, and he's the worst car on the track every week. It's just that simple.
So let's talk about, though, because I think the retribution and just how this is going to carry out is going to be very interesting. Because, everybody talks about, like, the immovable object against the unstoppable force. We're going to have a crossroads right here, because you have on one end, as Tim mentioned, RC, Richard Childress, who will do anything and everything to make sure both his grandsons are on the grid in the Cup Series. On the other side, you have Chevrolet, which has a history of, let's not forget, Parker Retzlaff, who's probably around the same talent tier as Ty Dillon, quite literally getting sent to the gulag for not pushing Kyle Busch on the final lap at Daytona and getting screwed out of any opportunities with Chevy ever. So if William Byron happens to miss the championship 4 because of this crash, I am very intrigued to see whether the Childress backing prevents Ty Dillon from getting like canceled from Chevy, or if that holds true again, where if it screws up one of the elites, then they're going to say, no more Ty Dillon. I don't know where it's going to go, Tyrell, but I could see either thing happening.
I think Ty Dillon will be in the 66 car then next year. Honestly, I want to touch on Tim's point. I had a completely kind of different view. The broadcast kind of to me portrayed like it was just the spotters that miscommunicated. It made it seem like somebody's lying here. Something doesn't line up because Ty was like, oh, my spotter already told Byron's spotter, and then Byron's like, I had no idea. Nobody told me anything. But with Tim saying he should have put his hand out the window, yes, for some reason it didn't register to me in the time. He should have put his hand out the window, and I think back to my background of amateur racing. I do go-kart racing, and whenever we're pitting, we put a fist up or a hand out and wave your hand, say, hey, I'm pitting. Like Tim said, it's the most easiest thing that you could do. So thank you, Tim, because you've just completely like changed my whole perspective on this whole thing. It is Ty Dillon's fault, unfortunately. I actually liked Ty Dillon. I liked him when he raced in Nationwide or Xfinity, whatever it was, whenever he was racing in the 3. I thought he was going to be good because he was winning races. He was coming up, and then he just kind of like flopped. He never got into RCR. He raced for, what was that, Germain Racing, the Geico car forever, and then he just kind of fell off the face of the earth. Now he's back, and then he kind of had a decent season. Now it's just like, kind of like what Tim said, the whole credibility kind of goes away. It was just a big mistake on his part, and you hate to see it for anybody, really. But man, I mean, that's just a huge mistake. And honestly, Eddie, I think you do also make a great point. I mean, Mr. H, I mean, the guy, he got what, the second ever Corvette that was made, the C8, right? Yeah. I mean, he's head honcho, right? I mean, Chevy talks to him pretty much every day, I'm sure. And then you've got this other big elite, Richard Childress, who, when something happens, we've seen it time and time again. Think back to Richmond last year when Austin Dillon took out everybody. RC was fighting. He's like, listen, he did nothing wrong, blah, blah, blah. So he will fight tooth and nail. So I'm honestly interested to see if Byron does miss, what happens to Ty Dillon. RC, you know what? I'm going to retract just a little bit here, and I don't want to ramble on, but RC seems to, almost to me, and it's always seemed this way, and I'm not sure if you guys see it this way either, he seems to fight more for Austin than Ty, obviously because Austin drives for him. But Ty, like, there was a chance to where Ty could have gotten in the car, right? But maybe Kyle Busch doesn't get signed. 2 brothers on the same team. But it just doesn't seem to work out that way. It's almost as if, and I don't want to, speculate family things here, but Ty's always kind of like the pushed away one. So I almost do wonder if something does happen. Does RC stick his foot in the door, say, oh, nope, my boy's still driving a Chevy. I don't care what you say. He's driving for Kalegi or whatever. Or does he end up driving maybe even the 44 car that JG Ailey drives, or even the 66 that shows up every once in 3 months, So it's going to be
interesting too, because like, you think back to, say, 2019, you had Ty Dillon very much in the pipeline. This is when he was actually performing really well with Germain Racing. He had that run where if he didn't get spun, he would have finished 4th on speed at Dover. He had those stage wins I talked about, but they opted to go with Daniel Hemrick to replace Ryan Newman instead of Ty, even though he was already in the Chevy Alliance. So I don't think that's a completely invalid point from TCB. It's worth considering.
And I want to point out too, sorry, he also went to Joe Gibbs Racing at one point. Remember, like, how random is that?
Yeah.
Well, also, I think the most realistic option, if Dillon is kind of pushed out, let's be honest, he'll probably still be in the Richard Childress pipeline, but I'm thinking Xfinity. I don't know if they'll make a 3rd car, but Austin Hill and Ty Dillon on the same Xfinity team, that could be fun.
I don't think it's gonna happen again. I don't think he's gonna lose his ride. It's just more of like, listen, if that were me, I'd sit you down and just like, listen, you're not having that good of a season, even though you're showing growth. You need to take a seat and kind of, it's like, you make a bad foul playing basketball or so on, right? You do something, you make a bad play. Listen, you take a seat and you pay for it and you learn your consequences of doing something to that sort. That's the thing about Ty Dillon, just bothers me. Because you're at the Cup Series level for a reason. You can't be making those mistakes. You just can't. And the timing just makes it worse. And again, I feel for William Byron because he had a really good day. Obviously, he wins a stage and so on. Now he's got to dig himself out of a points hole, and nobody knows how Talladega works. I know that, of course, Byron's back-to-back Daytona 500 winner, but Talladega last year, okay, in the playoffs, looked solid for Hendrick. Talladega in the spring, wasn't really that good. So if Hendrick doesn't have that good speed with the 24 and the 9, because let's be honest, I mean, the 5's not going to win at Talladega. If he does, that means everybody's crashed and he just happened to miss it. But I just view it like this, that like they're going to have to be above and beyond if they're going to want to point their way in. I mean, there's still technically a chance they could, but they need pretty much a miracle at this point. And of course, Ryan Blaney, I mean, to go back to his situation, I mean, he's pretty much at a must win at this point. I don't see how he can make up that gap. That's just way too much.
But I think it's funny. Like, Ryan Blaney, first of all, would be the clear-cut championship favorite, in my opinion, if he could just stay out of crashes. Think about all the DNFs he had. I believe this was his 8th DNF already this season, which is crazy. But, like, and a lot of these have not been his fault. But, like, if you took those out of the picture, I mean, he has been so fast. And I would argue right now, even though William Byron has a much more realistic chance of pointing his way in, I'm more confident that Ryan Blaney is going to win either Dega or Martinsville than that William Byron makes his way in.
Well,
and that's even with Byron showing so much speed this week.
I was going to say, you got to remember this, though. What has made the Ford so much of a standout at super speedways is their ability to qualify and then have that balance to keep the track position early on. I mean, Ryan Blaney will be getting stage points in some capacity as long as they qualify well at Talladega. And you can't forget, too, I mean, Austin Cindric, for example, is a great person to have, rather if it's behind you or in front of you at super speedways. He has really stood out this year, and of course, the past few years as being a constant consistency. And that's the reason why I say this, Eddie, is, think about it like this. I mean, yes, technically Gibbs has the luxury of Ty Gibbs not being in the playoffs. That could do some helping. And I guess Hendrick, you could say, can have it with the 48 not being in the playoffs. But you have, I would say, the higher card, if that makes sense. I mean, I know Bowman's been consistent in the playoffs of having top 10 finishes. I should say not consistent at super speedways, I should say, having top 10 finishes and good average finish. But typically he's not right there in the mix for the win. Austin Cindric has won. He's been in the mix of the win at super speedways and constantly keeps that track position. To me, Penske, even if they have the numbers disadvantage, they have that they have that wild card, and they technically have Josh Berry too. That could help play a factor, rather if it's on strategy or things. And I don't want to project going into predictions for this week, but I think we're going to see a lot more strategy at Talladega than what we typically do. And I really do think the Fords have something under their hat that they can figure out this week to make them stand alone from the rest. I really do believe that.
Yeah, and I just want to say, last time when the fall Talladega race came down to strategy and Ford was looking good and they had all their ducks in a row, that was that round of 12 race, like in 2018, when Stewart-Haas Racing dominated from start to finish. Nobody could pass him. Eric Almirola ended up getting into the round of 8. Boyer was up there, Harvick, Kurt Busch. But we've seen that before. We've seen that orchestration before. And I think Austin Cindric potentially fighting for his future with that team, given that his dad's not there anymore. He's going to be as much of a yes man as possible to helping Joey and Ryan, no matter how hard it is. So I think it's going to be really important, and it's going to be very clear that he's going to end up helping both of those guys out. But looking at the other guys, Tyrell, you mentioned Chase Elliott, and I mean, he did not have the best week, especially compared to the other two in terms of speed. First of all, it's compared to Larson and Byron. And then, of course, things didn't go well. He couldn't really make his way through the field and then ends up getting collected in that crash. Ends up salvaging a decent points day, but finds himself on the outside looking in right now. And I know he's had good runs at Dega before and at Martinsville, but it felt like to me that Las Vegas, especially after he won the last intermediate, Vegas felt like it was the race he had to capitalize and make the most of because, as I said, there's so little margin for error. When you're down to the round of 8, all these teams are just so good. I mean, there were points of this race before Blaney crashed in stage 1, 8 of the top 9 were the 8 playoff guys. 7 of them scored points in stage 1. You just cannot afford mistakes, and you can't afford mediocrity. And I worry that Chase Elliott missed his big chance here at Vegas because I just don't have much confidence in the 9 at Dega or Martinsville with the current point situation.
I totally agree. Chase was definitely running good in the beginning of the race. Like I remember at one point he was like 7th and he drove all the way up to maybe 2nd or 3rd. And I was thinking, oh man, if Chase could really keep this going, he's going to have a day. And of course he had that pit road mishap. And I mean, you know what? It happened so early on in the race. I thought that maybe he'd be able to come back and maybe salvage a higher finish than he did, but things just didn't play out. I mean, it was kind of uneventful for about 200 something laps, and then of course the ending happened. But yeah, I really don't see Chase winning at Talladega, and I hate to say that, but if you look back at his past Dega races, he's just not up there, not dominating. I mean, yeah, 2022 he won at Dega, and since then he really has not just been up there, not a player in the end. So I don't see him there. And in Martinsville last year, he had a chance to win, and Blaney came through past him and Larson and ended up winning. So if anything, I'm counting him out for Dega, but I'm counting him in for Martinsville.
Yeah, I think that's his better chance at Martinsville. And it's interesting too, the dichotomy, and I think Tropper, we kind of talked about this on the show on Friday, that Chevy and Hendrick especially tend to be much better at Martinsville in the spring than the fall. And the averages show it, the results show it, and maybe part of it is because we've seen so many Penske and Gibbs and Trackhouse drivers through the years having to be desperate in that Martinsville race and stepping up to the plate and doing well. But I don't know. I just don't have much confidence in Hendrick. They needed more this weekend. They could have had a 1-2 finish. If Byron doesn't run into Ty Dillon there, that race probably goes green and him and Larson finish 1-2. A lot of it's circumstantial, but stats are stats. They don't lie. They did not do enough numerically at Las Vegas to be in a good spot at Dega and Martinsville. That was the race you needed. That was the race you had the speed, and I have a lot of doubts, especially since I think Penske's going to be very good the next 2 races, and Gibbs showed they got a ton of speed too.
Yep, and now it's textbook desperation mode. Honestly, Talladega, I think at least one of the Chevys, one of the Hendrick guys are going to make probably some bizarre move that screws them over even worse because they're trying to get in that position. Then Martinsville becomes even more of a must-win. But as you said, the spring, Hendrick Motorsports statistically, and I'm thinking back a long time here, they perform better in the spring Martinsville race. Obviously, there are those, I don't even want to say outliers because it does happen every so often. Jeff Gordon 2015, which I think I saw was like 2 days ago, was 10 years ago already, like the 10-year anniversary. It's insane. But I digress. Jimmy in 2016, even Chase Elliott when he did in 2020 to win his way and ultimately won the championship. But for some reason, I think it's just the heightened level of competition, as you said, especially with Penske in the next gen era. And I'm not going to harp on it too much because we talk about it seemingly every show now. But either Blaney or Logano on those flat tracks, Martinsville, they are going to dominate. They are going to win their way in, meaning the only chance for the Hendrick guys is to somehow get as many stage points as possible and pray that the guys who are fighting in points aren't the ones that win. But unfortunately, in this case, it is because Blaney and Logano are obviously at the bottom. And I checked, we didn't even mention the point standings yet. Blaney is only 31 points out. So if he has a great Talladega Day stage points wise and someone else wrecks out, he's not even in a must-win situation anymore. So that's the other thing to keep in mind. But overall, it's just going to be interesting to see how it plays out for all sides. Because like we said, Hendrick, they're having their good moments. But JGR is on a whole nother level, and we know Penske's ready to step up.
Yeah. So worth mentioning, as since you alluded to it, the standings, Hamlin, X in out, he's locked in. So it's 7 drivers for 3 spots. Kyle Larson, good gap right now. I mean, he's up by 35 points, but that can be erased in the blink of an eye, and Larson does not have the best history at Talladega. We all know that. Bell's up by 20. I mean, if this was any other round, I'd feel pretty confident. But again, Dega's there. Things could change in a blink of an eye for Bell. Chase Briscoe's up by 15 points. Again, missed opportunity for him not winning that race. Byron's 15 down, 23 down for Elliott, 24 down for Logano, and 31 down for Blaney. I know you mentioned that it's doable with points, Tropper. And I mean, it's so difficult, and this is why I hate that the round of 8 has Talladega in it. It's so difficult to really project because a stupid move can cause a crash and take a bunch of people out. 28 cars crashed in one wreck there last fall. So, but I
remember we talked about it last year, how idiotic of a move it was. We were hoping that it wouldn't have too much of an effect because we've talked about it on the show too. Daytona is the more chaotic version of super speedway racing now. So Talladega, I don't want to say it's tame, but hopefully it doesn't end someone's season right there, even though it probably will. But round of 12, I could accept. It's been like that for, a decade now? To have it as the third to last race of the season is absolutely ludicrous. Sorry, I just had to go off on that because we talked about when the schedule released last year, and this is the first time now that's coming into fruition where we actually need to talk about it. And it's a big issue. Probably one of the things that NASCAR should change, even if it didn't. Yeah, that's just a whole nother tangent. I had to go off on Talladega.
No, it's worth it because it, especially like, and it kind of ties in with the Byron wreck too, because my whole frustration with this points format is, yes, in any points format, you could see someone's season derailed by something stupid, like what happened to William Byron or a wreck at Talladega. But because you re-level the field altogether and all they have to fall back on are these playoff points with their wins and stages, there are so many more chances for something like that to ruin your season that wouldn't happen in any other format. And that's why these things get frustrating. But back to what I was saying, Tim, I just feel like at this point, even though it's doable on points, and I know they're going to get stage points at Talladega, with Blaney and Logano, I really think the number of wins Penske has over the next 2 races will determine how many drivers they end up with in the final 4. I think if Blaney and Logano don't win Dega or Martinsville, they're both missing.
Yeah, and in Tropper, I know, for example, you mentioned the points gap, and I'm not going to sit here and act like this is a fact, but I remember going through when I was going to the tracks to cover Kansas or Gateway and so on at the start of the playoffs. I don't exactly remember, so again, I apologize if I'm wrong, but I think if I remember, the biggest playoff gap in terms of a points difference raced in a round in history was, I think, 24. And I very well may be wrong, but I remember reading through the stat sheets, and I think it was in the 20s. If that's the case, and again, I don't want to put that as like it's a fact out there, but if that is the case, I mean, again, we've seen crazy things happen, right? And that a miracle can happen. I mean, really, Joey Logano's championship last year was the definition of against the odds in all sorts of playoff racing or racing in general. But for the likelihood of Ryan Blaney erasing a 30-plus point gap, like, yeah, somebody has a bad day, there's a chance. But here's the thing. Realistically, that guy that needs to have a bad day is Chase Briscoe. And I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but the gap from him to where Kyle Larson is, the gap from him to where Christopher Bell is, you need a lot. And you need a lot to go wrong back-to-back races, really, for the 20 car or the 5 car. So the reason why, Eddie, you say, for example, what the next 2 races are going to look, I view it like this. I think if you're not Joey Logano, or I should say, if you are Joey Logano and you are Ryan Blaney, it may not read must win because, again, anything can happen at Talladega. But to me, it still feels like a must win regardless because that points gap does not get diminished very often. And when you have an unpredictable track you're going to where you may be great going to the final lap of stage 1 and next thing you know, you don't earn stage points. You need to find something, and it needs to be a win. That's just a realism. If you want to be a champion, this is where you need to win, and it's in the round of 8. And again, I feel like the Penske cars, they have a possibility of doing something this round. It's just a matter of which Penske car can get it, and I do believe a Penske car wins this weekend. I really do.
Yep. And also, just I wanted to figure we might as well engage with our audience. There's a comment in our TikTok live. Logan said, it's crazy that there might not even be a Ford. And we were talking about all these possibilities for Logano and Blaney to get in. But let's say before just don't. Ben, I know I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. There's still 6 other people to choose from for a Final 4. But what are we expecting for the end of the season, Ben, if Logano and Blaney can't pull off the miracle?
Well, I'd say right now, at least for me, I know neither one is really great at super speedways, and they both outspokenly said they hate super speedways. But Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell are in the best points position, and I think they'll be able to maximize. I'm going to pretend that this race goes very similar to the spring. And let's just say if Penske doesn't win, I think Larson and Bell right now, points wise, are in a comfortable spot. So the real question becomes, can Chase Briscoe hold on to that fourth spot? Which a win, of course, nullifies that. I wouldn't count out Briscoe. I think a lot of people have forgotten because right after it, Ross Chastain did the Hail Melon move. 10 laps to go in that race. In a Stewart-Haas car in 2022, Chase Briscoe was in position to get to the Final Four. He was in the round of 8. People forget that. He went on a deep run in those playoffs when there were a lot of upset-minded drivers. He was the one that made it to the round of 8, was in position to win, but then Christopher Bell got past him, won, and then the rest was history with Chastain. Everybody forgets that. He almost made the Final Four 3 years ago. I would not discount Chase Briscoe because he keeps proving us wrong. He's right there with Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell every single week and almost won his way into the Final Four yesterday. So I wouldn't count him out, but if there's one driver below of those 4 that I think on points could do it, I still think Chase Elliott. I know Byron turned a corner yesterday, but I just have not seen the sustained speed from the 24 that I have seen from the 9 all year. I think that's a separator, and I think at Martinsville, I just trust Chase Elliott a little bit more than William Byron. TCB, I'll go to you, and then we'll finish with some F1.
Yeah, actually, I do agree with you 100%. Byron, I don't think is going to make it, honestly. If you look back at his past couple of Martinsville fall races, he doesn't run that well. He runs like 15th, 16th, and he's always just 1 point ahead or 1 point under trying to get in. And I think Tropper made that point, saying that Hendrick just does not run good there in the fall for some odd reason. They run good there in the spring, and just in the fall, they kind of just fall apart there. I don't know why, but I do think Chase again will get in, and I'm still sticking on it. I think 3 Toyotas, 1 Chevy. I don't want to say I can't see a Ford get in, and I think the only Ford that would get in would be Blaney. I mean, Logano, obviously anybody has a fair shot to win Dega, but I do believe if anything it'll be Blaney that gets in, but I'm still thinking 3 Toyotas and 1 of the other manufacturers.
Yeah.
Don't forget, folks, it's an odd year.
Yeah, worth noting. It is an odd year, so you never.
Oh, and one other thing with Toyotas, we're talking about Denny Hamlin potentially taking it all, but his teammate, like you said, Chase Briscoe, remember where his first career win was, right? Phoenix.
Well, and that's why, not to spiral back real quick to the discussion about the championship 4, but let's just say these 4 right here are the championship 4, and Kyle Larson's the car in along with the 3 Gibbs cars. I mean, it is really, really hard to give an edge of who has that advantage. I mean, of course, Kyle Larson's won a championship, right? And had a big clutch moment, of course, to put himself in position to win that championship. But, I mean, beyond that, Christopher Bell, the last year and a half, I know this Phoenix didn't go as good, but like last year, that 20 car was really, really good at Phoenix. And had they not had the clap stand at Martinsville, Christopher Bell could have potentially been champion. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter of how good that car was there. And I could see the same thing. For example, you mentioned Chase Briscoe, where he got his first win. All these things. The 19 team, one thing they've done great this year, other than qualifying, is proving doubters wrong left and right. And the reason why I say this is, well, of course, Denny Hamlin just got 60 wins. He's having the best year. And again, many will say right now, based off momentum, he's the biggest threat. But in a race like that, to be honest with you, he comes in almost as an underdog, not just because he doesn't have a championship, but because of recency and success. All those guys have had more success than him, but I think that gives me all the more the reason to say Denny Hamlin's going to win that race in the championship. So that's the reason why I say Phoenix, if it is this 4, I don't think you could pick a car fairly that's going to win the championship, because I think every one of those 4 cars, well, I mean, not as much maybe Larson with how the season's gone, but every one of those 4 cars have made a strong case on why they should be a champion in 2025.
7 of the 8 in the round of 8 have made a very strong case all season long. And then you got Joey Logano. But I'll leave it at that. You never know, and Logano could still steal this thing. I would not be shocked. Dega is going to be fun on Sunday. But I want to wrap last 10 minutes. Again, F1 was off this week. They're going to be back at the Circuit of the Americas. They've got 2 triple headers in a row, 6 races left. Gap is 22 between Piastri and Norris. Lando's been slowly chipping away. Our tweet of the week, F1 posted this little promo video. We're going to be back next week at COTA, and it's hyping up the McLaren back and forth battle. I don't know if you guys saw this, but then at the very end, the screen goes black, and then the last second, like a Marvel cutscene, they just show Max Verstappen celebrating. And it's a little hint to remind people not only that he's won the last 4, but with his recent success, he is only 63 points out, which is a lot in Formula One, yes. But let's be honest. If for a 2 full race gap over 6 races in any of the 3 disciplines we cover, NASCAR, F1, and IndyCar, if there was one driver who could find a way to overcome that, it's Max Verstappen. I mean, come on. He's doing it with this car right now. And with everything that's going on, with Oscar turning off the radio last week and not with the whole situation with them winning the constructors and all these favoritism being shown towards Lando, they almost crashed each other on lap 1 last race. People forgetting that too. Singapore turn 1, lap 1. Lando and Oscar both almost took each other out. I would not be shocked if something like that happens very soon. They're going to one of the craziest turn 1s on the planet, Circuit of the Americas, in 6 days. So I would not be shocked if something crazy happens between Lando and Oscar. Of course, it's going to take a couple of DNFs, Tropper, but it's only 63 points. Max Verstappen has looked incredible over these last few weeks, is racing really with nothing to worry about because nobody expects him to be in this position. I could see him rattling off 6 straight wins. He's done it before in his career. Why not? And if Lando and Oscar get physical, crash each other one race, he just keeps gaining 5 points here, 10 points there. It's a lot. But 6 races, 63 points. If there's anybody who can do it, it's Max Verstappen. And F1, clearly, their social media team knows that people are starting to notice where he is in the points because it's doable.
Well, I'm going to make a very interesting comparison here. As we said, Verstappen right now is going in with the mindset of let's have fun, let's win races. I got nothing left to prove, and we got nothing to lose right now. If we win the championship. If we don't, we'll just rattle off wins. Does that sound familiar to what we were talking about a half hour ago?
Yes,
Denny
Mr.
Hamlin.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. When you have a driver who is already content for whatever reason, content but still motivated and at their best, they will continue to perform at the highest level. So I have no doubt that Verstappen can win the remainder of the races. But it seems like that Red Bull car is back, or at least Verstappen is back. You're right. In order to win that elusive 5th straight championship, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know has ever happened in F1, it is going to take mistakes from McLaren, which apparently they do make a lot of self-inflicted mistakes. So anything's possible. I do think the odds are still heavily stacked against. But for Verstappen individually to at least scare McLaren a little bit is definitely realistic.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, with the way things have gone, I feel like Lando and Oscar are going to take each other out in the next couple of races. It's going to happen.
Especially at COTA, like you said, there is that possibility. I could easily see that turn 1. It's chaotic enough in NASCAR, and we've seen fair enough chaos in F1, but just those two going at it when what's the points gap right now between Lando and Oscar? Only less than
22.
10.
22. It's less than a race. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, they're going to be going at it with everything they have, and they're both young drivers. So I'm not saying I'm itching for them to make a mistake, or I truly think they are, but the possibility's there.
Tim, I remember last year when we were on the show a lot on Mondays, we kept doing the math of Lando trying to catch Verstappen. Now, the math here is not in Verstappen's favor. He's got to gain 10 points every race. But, again, I'm still saying there's a chance, and I think F1 kind of acknowledged that in that video. But, I mean, if there's anybody who's going to do this, it is the driver of the Red Bull, Max Verstappen.
Well, I say, jokingly in the past, right, you could say 2 things. NASCAR can't have a playoffs without Jeff Gordon. You can never count out Jimmy Johnson. And I'm going to say the same exact thing. You can never count out Max Verstappen. If there is one thing other than maybe Jesus Christ returning to this earth in front of our faces that could happen, it is Max Verstappen coming from all the way from beyond and yonder to come back and win a championship. So I'll leave it with that. I think there's a chance. I definitely think there is. Is it likely? No. But maybe our answers could all be, or our hopes can all be answered when Lando and Oscar go crashing into turn 1 on lap 1 of the race this week. And Max, goes and flies on. And I do have this question real quick too, because it's sticking in my head. Obviously, I know the race is this weekend, but now that NASCAR's run the new version of COTA, I guess you could say the shorter version, Which version of Coda do you think is better? That's what the normal version or the abbreviated version? Because I felt both were really exciting. I still think Coda is, I know it's a little boring maybe on the F1 or for the IndyCar side of things, but I feel it's the best road course that racing has to offer right now, in my opinion.
I think so too, and it's a new track built 15 years ago. In my personal opinion, I think both layouts that are being used by the respective series are the best for those cars right now. I think for the next gen, the adjusted one, as we've seen, I think is a little better than the original. While the original had some great moments, like Ross Chastain's win with Bowman and Allmendinger, maybe not a great moment for the man wearing the Bowman shirt right now, but I think in general, I think it's better product, and everybody talked about how the Coda race was great this year. With F1, obviously, use the full layout that was built for Formula One 15 years ago. But I think both of them have their benefits. I think overall, it's just a really good track. But TCB, your thoughts here. Is it possible? Tim had a great analogy. I don't know if you're going to be able to top that. But is it possible for Verstappen to get 63 points in 6 races?
Death, taxes, and Max Verstappen winning the championship. I don't know if that tops the Jesus Christ comment, but honestly, I agree with Tropper, and I kind of could see them tangle a little bit in turn 1, and then Verstappen wins. Now, me being a Lewis fan for so long, 2021 still hurts. But honestly, you know what? If he does come back from 63 points back and gets the championship, that will be absolutely amazing. And I will actually root for that because it's I don't think it's been done. Well, actually, it has been done before. Maybe not with this many races left in the season, but honestly, if that happens, that'll be very cool to see. And again, 2 young drivers. I mean, they're beefing. I mean, this is one thing that is definitely different between NASCAR and F1 is obviously for the fans that don't know, F1 drivers, when they're teammates, they go against each other. They're not really even teammates. They're just like pretty much rivals. They're trying to finish ahead of each other, and there's just constant beef compared to NASCAR where they're kind of buddy-buddy, but there's a little bit of beef. But with these two, again, both young drivers, and they're both like, I'm number one driver. Eventually, the egos are going to get too high, and I think they're going to get really high up in turn 1 in Austin this weekend, and I think they're going to tangle, and we'll see. I honestly do think Verstappen could come back and sweep it out. I mean, he's just so good. So,
and it's also not like Lando and Oscar have to make consistent mistakes. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but Max Verstappen wins every single race and gets the fastest lap. 6 races left, 6 times 8-point gap between first and second. That's 48 of his 63 points already made up. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but then if you look at Lando and Oscar, if they have one tangle up, let's say it's at Coda, and they don't score even points, those last 15 points are erased and Verstappen's right back in it. So I'm not saying that it's going to be easy. I'm not saying it's going to be realistic, but the fact that there's even a 1% chance that it's feasible, you can't count him out.
Yeah. Hey, I got a question real quick. Because I know we technically don't talk about gambling on the radio, but does anybody know what the betting odds right now are for Max Verstappen to win a championship? Because I'm actually intrigued if anybody can find that for me.
Let me look it up. Let's see.
I will say betting is one thing that Motorsports Today has not ventured much into yet, but
I say because they have to be pretty darn promising if somebody were to just lay something down right there.
All right. He is at plus 650 on Bet365. Piastri's the favorite. Lando's at plus 250. Verstappen's at plus 650. And the next closest is George Russell at plus 25,000. So,
I don't think you could parlay. Never mind. I was gonna say if you could parlay the next 6 races of him winning them all and a championship, you could be a millionaire right now. But that's likely not going to happen.
Well, not to it. Give it a shot.
Well,
we never have to worry about a travel budget for Motorsports Today again.
Well, that's true.
If you were to bet on Charles Leclerc, he's plus 2 million. So
I don't even know if it's mathematically possible. I think there's got to be like disqualifications.
Would they even take that bet? Like, it's illegal.
I think they'd take it as free money.
Yeah,
they'd take that. Vegas works in mysterious ways. But Viva Las Vegas for Denny Hamlin. He got his win. He's on to the Final Four. Talladega on Sunday. Coda on Sunday. We'll be back on WRSU at 12 o'clock Friday and then on YouTube and Spotify. Going to preview those races. We got this interview. Jeffrey Hrunka talking with Mick Schumacher after his test first time Michael Schumacher's kid has driven an IndyCar. He did it at Indianapolis Motor Speedway on the road course today. So we'll have that for you on Friday, and we'll be back on TikTok on Monday. But for our
For the 200th episode,
yes,
next Monday.
Yes, episode 200. We've gotten there pretty quick. For Drew Jua, for Adam Tropper, TCB, Tim Moore, Eddie Kalegi signing off. Talk to you again on Friday.